I think I was muted for just a second there. So good morning, everyone. I'm pretty sure that we're got this correct now. Welcome to the Dev Talk Show on November 12th, 2025. I'm here with my co-host Rich Ross. How are you doing this morning, Rich?
Doing well, Chris. How are you?
Good.
Been a little bit.
Yeah, it has been. Definitely some schedule changes. Still trying to get the morning hour here, which I guess would be approximately 7:30 to 8:30 US Eastern time. So that just means that we want to get moving a little more quickly. And
hmm
I imagine a couple of the topics to talk about. Like we definitely have a topic we're going to talk about today. I'm really excited because I think I'm gonna learn something about agents and agent workflow and this is the thing. Sometimes intentionally, I say, okay, don't tell me, so that I can learn with everyone else on the show, and it's a more genuine question and answer. So the other thing that's going on obviously is .NET Conf. And so yesterday,
Yeah.
the first day of .NET Conf, .NET 10 is out. That also means that .NET 6, I think, went end of life like this maybe today. And .NET, so we've got 8, 9, and 10 that are in support. This 9, I believe, is the first standard term support that's going to be 2 years. So that
Yeah.
lines it up with 10. It is aggressive if you're used to the old Windows .NET framework, essentially forever support, but that .NET framework also didn't come of age in this internet era where you get fast-moving CVEs like the request smuggling one from a couple weeks ago, and a fast-moving technology base where just a few years ago we weren't even talking about agentic workflow
Yeah.
and semantic kernel, and it just moves everything is moving so quickly, right? So
Yeah. That's what I'll be spending my afternoon on, getting playing around with some major framework stuff. Because if you're interested and you're in the Philly area, little plug. Um, Next Wednesday we're doing Philly.net, and that will be the topic. We're going to do agent framework and get some people hands on with that. Let them see what's possible. It's still a preview thing. If you're doing anything agentic wise, semantic kernel is the way to go. And oops, you hear me okay? Or okay.
I'm
Uh
mostly just doing a producer thing while you're talking. So
maybe.
yeah,
Semantic kernel is the way to do production stuff right now, but if you're interested, you got some time to play around and get some feedback. Agent framework is the way to go forward. And sometime next year that'll get GA'd. That's the current rough time frame. So cool. And also mentioning that spent last week with some fellow developers at a tech bash, had a couple of sessions there, one on agentic DevOps, which was a lot of fun. We actually uh, uh, vibe coded a session, I would say, because I kind of had a script, but I kind of didn't. So we went in whatever direction the team wanted to go into. So it was fun. It was a good couple of days out there. Good to see some old friends, and good to kind of catch up.
yeah, no, that's good. So I mean, obviously a lot's going on. I definitely want to see what's been done with the orbital project. I have seen a ton of emails coming my way. Um, and I also, well, in any case, uh, I think you upgraded .NET Aspire. So let's
Yeah,
talk through this.
let's talk
I'd
through
like
kind of
to
what we've been
see
doing.
it. Yeah. Is
Yeah.
it okay for me to switch over
So
here?
yeah, go for it.
All right. So, um, there's a couple things going on. One is that so yesterday, I believe I'm right about this, that yesterday it was announced that .NET Aspire, we have been upgrading it with like .NET 5, 9.9.3, 9.4. I think
Yeah.
one of the latest ones was 9.5.2. And I believe yesterday they announced a few things. Number one,
Okay. Because I haven't heard anything.
yeah, yeah. So we're gonna have to catch up on a lot of this because .NET Conf happens during the workday, and I was not able to watch a lot of it. But let me tell you, very late last night, I was trying to zoom through announcements. Number one, .NET Aspire is now called Aspire. It is simply
Yeah.
Aspire.
Right. Because it
Uh,
aspires all the things.
yeah, and it says just according to this, a full polyglot application platform. While Aspire continues to provide best-in-class support for .NET applications, this is important. Version 13 elevates Python and JavaScript to first-class citizens.
Yeah.
And I say that because you and I just actually had this conversation offline a couple weeks ago about how even though Aspire's integrations say, yeah, sure, bring in a Node project, bring in a Python project, bring in stacks and bring in tooling, Postgres, whatever that maybe has nothing to do with the traditional Microsoft mindset that some
Right.
people might have. .NET Aspire can still manage it.
Yes.
But the point that I made is the app host is still C#. Like there was no getting around that. So
Right.
I'm very interested in what they mean by the first class support. I do not know, and so I'm not going to pretend that I'm here to tell everybody about. We'll definitely have a show about it soon. There's a CLI, the Aspire CLI, a VS Code extension. It has a new home at aspire.dev.
Yeah.
So, which is where you're at. So I'm very interested in understanding what happened there. It talks about the app host. It's right there where it says define your stack in code. I think was a
Yeah.
little bit earlier up, and so I still think that it's plausible that the app host is C#. I think maybe part of the thinking here is that look, even if you're not a C# expert, you can build an app host. These are not complicated projects. We're not asking you to be a C# expert to do just what you see right here, adding an app, your JavaScript app front end, setting the HTTP endpoint. There's a lot of people who use Node for the first time, and they were able to just, like, it was me, in fact, who was just like, yeah, I see what's going on here. I can make this work without being an expert. But hey, runs in VS Code, but the fact that it runs in VS Code, generally what it really means is that you take it anywhere. Take it to Linux, take it to Mac, use the
Yeah.
IDE that makes you happy.
I don't know what that was. Okay.
Yeah, so
Absolutely. And then what's cool here is this little widget thing. So, hey, and I have a front end and a database. That's great. I've got that. Maybe I'm just doing a front end and an API service. I can do that.
yep.
And it basically show you how you would construct your app host here. Really, really nice nice tutorial here on the front page to kind of get that going. And then talking about the polyglot, all the different languages there. So, who knows? Maybe we'll find something, to include in Orbital and then be able to take advantage of this. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah. So speaking of which, you had just upgraded to a 9-point version. So the first bad news is that now we're looking to go to 13 at some point.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yep. So let's see if I can. Gosh, this is really small. All right, let me just close up some things here. So I did a few things. This is all open source. It's all up on our GitHub sites at the devtalkto/orbital. And we'll talk a little bit more about what's on the GitHub side in a minute for some of the things that we did. What this project is, one of the things that I did was actually reorganized the project a bit. So we've got a section here for actual tests, because we're going to talk about this test-driven design concept. So we kind of organized a number of tests under that folder, and then all of our source code. So the actual code that's running our application is here. So some of the favorites around, our app host. If we look at this and look at the CS proj for that, we can see that we are now in, where is it? Does that not work?
952 on line 14, yeah.
I
What were you
lost my
looking for?
zoom. I lost my zoom in. That's terrible.
Oh, no.
Or at least the key combination is not what I thought
Control
it was.
1 is not working?
No. All right. I'll have to play around with that later. That's good to know, because I use that during,
Yeah.
just.
Oh, I've gotten very used to it.
Mhm.
I started using it with us, and then I'm using it at work now all the time. So
Crazy. All right. So basically 952 is what we've boosted this up to. Oh, that's why, because this is in the way. There we go. So we did that upgrade first, and I've been interested in kind of, I think I kind of made the comment when we were doing one of the dab sessions that, hey, someday we'll bring Orbit out of mothballs. And I started, in the background doing it, an hour here on the weekend, an hour here, there, just kind of understanding. Because I think it's a good project to dive into these kind of topics and conversations, right? So that for me, and plus I do have this, desire to say, all right, let's get something finished here because that kind of in the back of my head has been pushing me along. So for those reasons, I started going back into this. So we upgraded to 952. Um, one of the and maybe just to show, I think it is up and running. Let's see here. If I do this, is it this one? So it looks like it's here. All the everything's green. That's awesome. If I go to this, we can see our data explorer. Um, we do have we don't shouldn't have any. Oh, we do have some items in this one. Okay, so this is seeding some of the data in here. So this is an older container, but the idea is I've got some things in here. So this is good. And then I think it's let's try that one. So we get to the meeting. I think there's an error when this loads. Yeah, there's some issue here that I've got to look at. But and the new meetings as well. Yeah, it's not pulling back all the events. There's some reasons for that, but starting to move this in this direction. A couple things here. So if we go back to our project, let's see what was some of the interesting bits we were working on. Oh, I thought this was interesting. So one of the things we did around, if we look at our program file and our app host, is that we had our Cosmos DB client, right? And we're using app host to kind of set up this, essentially this container, which is a emulator of the Cosmos DB environment. We just saw that when we looked at that in the web page there, and basically created that instance for us, and that worked great. And then what we knew is we needed a couple of containers. We have one for the meetings, and we have another one for the metadata. So with that, we're essentially bringing those containers into an object, and then basically getting a reference to that object when we stand up our API, because that's where all of that interfacing happens. Now, what we don't do here is we don't assign the options related to that Cosmos DB connection. And that's something that we were interested in doing because what we wanted to do was to have it convert the casing of the properties to not be title case where or leave the first letter capital, but actually make it lowercase. And when we make it lowercase, that's because the ID field in our class is capitalized, but over in Cosmos, it's looking for a lowercase one. So if we do the camel case option, everything has a lowercase first letter and then camel case for the rest of, however it is we define the rest of them, but at least takes that first one and drops it down. That gets set over here in these Cosmos serialization options, which is a part of the Cosmos client options. Now, you would think the Cosmos client options can only be assigned on the Cosmos client. Actually, they can be assigned on the Cosmos database as well. So this way, if I have a client and I might have two different databases, and the docs go into this a little bit, you might have different settings for each of them because one might come from one group, one might come from another, let's say. So this gives us the option to, at the database connectivity, say this is, what I'm going to go ahead and configure. The other thing that I didn't do previously was this part here. I was basically just bringing in a keyed container. I think it was doing something like, if I do, well, it's running, but that's fine. It'll builder dot. First day with the new keyboard, literally add keyed Cosmos container, right? I was doing something like this. See how it gives me the intelligence or the ghost sense there. And that's fine. But then it certainly compiles. It just doesn't work. It was having trouble not only finding the container at one point, but also not respecting the fact that the connectivity that it should have been pulling from, it wasn't respecting the options there. I was actually doing some debugging and going and seeing that client that got created, and there was no those options were blank essentially. So by going this way, we're actually building that keyed container off of the database and the database connection, and everything flows. So now we've got that working. So that was something that kind of played around with and got
got fixed and working. So I'm very happy with that. That's why you see metadata over there, because I was actually running some tests to make sure that it was all working. And
One thing
I'm
to
saying a
note
lot. So feel
is
free to jump in.
that this is all in the API project. This is
Yes,
not Aspire. So
not
the
not
Aspire,
Apple.
yeah, the Aspire app host. I mean, the API project is independent.
Yes.
So there was a change made in the Aspire app host, the orchestration,
Mm-hmm.
to basically just define the preview emulator. That's it.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
That,
we were doing that. That was always the thing, and that was
yeah.
so. This was always happening, right? We always had a preview emulator because we wanted it to run locally and not be running in the cloud,
Oh,
just
it
because of
does
where we are.
define the database and the two containers. Okay. Okay.
Yep.
All
Yeah,
right.
and then this is just a reference of them so that they
Yep.
can get to the project,
Yeah.
essentially.
Right.
Okay. So I went back. So the funny thing, and we were talking about this, I was kind of vibe coding this with, or trying to solve my problem with Copilot, GitHub Copilot, and instead of the way the conversation was going was, here's the error I'm seeing, and it was giving a list of things that possibly could be going wrong, and that would got it down the path of looking at, well, is camel case really getting set on those properties, and finding out that it wasn't. It
Yeah.
took a little bit of investigation on my part to read the documentation again and understand that, oh, it's not just setting up a keyed container. It actually has to come off of the database itself when you do it in this one. So
Okay. Now,
part of that is that Copilot got me to the point of thinking down the path of I should go and do the stuff that I'm aware of and go read up the documentation and figure out how to do it, as opposed to relying on it to solve the underlying problem. But go ahead.
there was another thing that you added to the project, and this is where I need to understand a little bit more what exactly is happening. Is
Okay.
an agent to assist with test-driven development.
You're on that path. Okay. So let's stop this. So our app's working. That's fine. But let's, because we're already halfway. Wow, we're already halfway through. These shows go so quick when they're only an hour.
Yeah. You got a weird. It's just this weird like echo going on. I'm not sure what it is. It's not that. It's not like horrible, but it's like there's a reverb. Maybe it sounds more like a reverb. That's what it sounds like. So, anyways,
Interesting.
and
Okay.
it goes in and out. So, anyways, all right. So
I will do one quick check. Hang on a sec. Oh, that's still off. One last thing. What's this over here? Settings. Yeah, and I'm not hearing things come back in my headset, so I can't hear anything,
okay.
to be honest. Okay. All right, let's press on a little bit. So when we think about, and if it gets too unnerving, let me know. We'll try and debug what the issue is. But I only see the one input coming up on mine, nothing doubling. So, although, is that any better?
The weird thing
That's
is it was going in and out, and now it's more
Oh,
steady.
really?
Yeah. And I didn't know if it was related to you being closer to the microphone, further away. I started to wonder, is there some kind of weird bleed going on? But I don't feel like a bleed would sound like that. A bleed
Yeah.
usually sounds more like a delay.
Right. Okay.
All right. So, anyways,
Okay. So when we think about doing this, which is, so this is our Copilot interface, right? And we think about how we might interact with it. One of the basic ones is ask. And what ask does is just, hey, we're having a conversation about the code or some kind of an issue, or help me understand the concept, but I'm not going to influence anything in the code base. I have no ability to connect to anything. So it's very much just a pointed, almost Teams conversation with someone who doesn't have access to your code. There's edit, where we can go ahead and have this conversation, and the context then is around the file that we're talking about here. So any kind of editing might happen against that one particular file that's there. Agent is that capability to say, okay, I could see everything. I have access to tools through things like Model Context Protocol connections, or MCP, and we can have this conversation. And in that conversation, I may go and do things to your code, or at least I have the ability to do that. For things that come outside your code, like going and talking to other resources, depending on your settings, by default, I'll ask about it, right? So those are the things that you can kind of do to help um, to drive the interaction. Those are the basic things coming out of the box, right? So anything you're providing is related to the context here. So maybe we're adding files to the conversation, files that might be open, like, hey, we want to bring in this program CS from the API, right? So now that's context to what it is that I'm asking my question about. There's also other context that you can add. If you go to, let me bring this back up. If you go into here, so in the GitHub folder, if I want to add a new file and put in something called Copilot instructions.md. So this would be the basic set of instructions about my overall repository. And that would be something that could be referenced and included every time I have this chat. So when we think of, so right now there's nothing in here, but maybe I have something very basic like this project is using .NET and Cosmos DB for data storage, right? So just a little bit of background around the application. Testing is using XUnit for unit tests and integration tests, right? So these are things that gives it an overview at this point about my project, right? For variables, I prefer the format right? So it gets an idea of, okay, if I'm going to give you code, that's the variable structure I should include in here, right? So all of these things are information that I don't have to type in to the prompt every time I ask a question or to give information or to ask it something about my project. This instructions provides that level of detail, and it's a way of driving the conversation to the project, but also how me as a coder might build out my application so that I'm more likely to get a response from Copilot that I'm going to accept. Okay.
Okay, so now the naming of these files, and I don't want to take a long detour because, like you said, this
No.
with our new timing, it goes
Mhm.
quick. The .github folder chat modes, is that a standard? Is that okay?
Yeah, we'll talk about the chat modes in a minute, but
Okay.
the GitHub folder
Yep.
and GitHub Copilot instructions. This is where you would want to go to get more information.
Okay.
So just add in custom repository instructions. You can see information about creating custom ones. There's here, this is the one I was talking about with Copilot. Instructions MD file. You can also have additional, something more specific. So maybe I've got an aspire.instructions file, or I've got a Azure.instructions file, right? So depending on the context of my question, I would I might have different sets of instructions for it to bring into that conversation. Okay. And these are things you can specify. These are things that you definitely should be looking into because you should, although there is a basic prompt inside of GitHub Copilot, you don't want to just accept the, kind of the system prompt that's there. You want to be creating this content to be able to provide your own more refined context to what's being asked. Okay. And that's what we did with this. Get rid of that. So this is a file, and I think I might be able to have the history here. Hang on one sec. Okay. It's going to control home. Yes. Well, maybe. Okay. Come on. It's bringing back a lot of history. I spent a lot of time yesterday morning talking about this. So come on. Boom. Okay. Why a custom agent? Well, when we look at the, ask agent and edit, agent is one of those things, as we said, has the ability to interact with and be able to make changes to your underlying code base. This still says for me configure modes. I know there's an update that says configure agents, which is really what this is moving to. And if I click this, it gives me the ability to create a new custom chat mode file. Right. So I could say, maybe we have one for Azure deployment. And we're going to save it in our chat modes because we're going to keep it with this, right? So here's this here. I now have, where'd you put it? Oh, enter to confirm your name. Azure deployment. Right. So there it is here. So now I've got this new chat file, and I also have a new mode here to go to. What I did was, I know I want to do test-driven development here because I think it's important. I think it's a good concept, as you and I both work on it and don't make sure we don't clobber changes on each other. So, but I'm not that experienced at test-driven development. So what I said was, I need you to help me create this custom agent mode for doing test-driven development. Can we generate a prompt, which is what this file is, right? This prompt file, this one here. Can we generate the prompt file to guide me through consistently developing the failing test and writing the code, and then enable a passing test, and ask any questions as we go through this process? So it started to do that. It gave me some contextual questions. And I said, well, what framework are you using? What's the scope of your TDD? Is it only unit tests? Is it integration test? What kind of workflow preferences do you have for doing this, right? So should it be like a red-green refactor explicitly? Coding style patterns. How do you typically like to do your code? What's the behavior of the agent, right? Is it the strict coach and that it's only going to enforce those rules? Or is it more of a collaborative partner that can help explain what's going on? So all of those are questions that it asked me. And then I kind of gave it, my take on all that, which is all of this here. I really wanted it to be a coach, but I wanted to be able to respect the fact that there are rules and I should follow the rules if I'm in this agent mode. And we went back and forth around this. And this is basically what it came up with this file. And again, this file, it's up on the GitHub repo. You're able to see it, but I've got a description, and then I've got this component here, which is a set of tools that's available for it to run. In this case, the run test tool. And I believe that is just because I asked it, well, what does that mean? It is just the, it should be just the, I think I started going, oh, here we go. Run test. So the run test is the built-in GitHub Copilot tool that allows the agent to execute unit tests within my application. So it had, you can define a limited set of capabilities that this agent can do because we're focused around TDD. Well, that is one of the things it needs to basically run. So from that, I created this agent. I haven't used it yet. I'll be honest with you. I created it. It seemed like it was pretty cool. And then my day kind of ran out of free time and I had to focus on some other stuff. But this could be one of those things where we look at this and say, hey, let's work, let's start down the TDD path of some feature and then see how it starts to build that out. And this may be where I need some of your help because I think you're a little more experienced in TDD than I am. But so that's how this all came about. Questions, thoughts, I'm sure there's lots of questions because I kind of went through a lot there.
So there was a lot I didn't understand. I feel like it's interesting that does that mean that this tddcoach.chatmode.md is this just output, or is this the instructions for what's going to coach the project?
Exactly. So it's output from the conversation I had with Copilot to create this file. And then it's then going to be used as input when we are in this agent mode. So in this TDD agent mode.
Okay. So how did that mode get added?
that was when I did the configure modes.
Oh, okay.
And then it comes up here and I went through that process of creating a new custom chat mode. And then that sets that in the, I believe it's only in the workspace. Yeah, this is a workspace level thing. That this one is, that's how you create those modes. And then it'll be added to the list. Now, what gets added to the list is, as you'll see here, if
Mm-hmm.
it's just essentially an empty, roughly empty tool description or chat mode description. But what I
Yeah.
did was then said, okay, I could probably do the same thing here with it and do something like, does this work? Maybe. Hey, I'm creating an agent for deploying to, I did do that. I'm in the text box. It's here. No, I think it's in my machine and not in the
Right.
in the dev box.
Yeah. Okay.
So I
So
can,
this
you
file,
get where I'm going. Yeah.
it has something that reminds me of front matter in other contexts.
Yep.
And then it's sort of just a prompt after that, or
Yeah. That's all it
okay.
is.
Yeah.
This is just the information. So now that we're in this mode with this component, let's say, for example, we wanted to do what's something we wanted to work on that might do this. Kind of had the metadata. Well, we need to edit the metadata, right? We need a page for editing metadata because we're not always going to be able to seed it essentially. So can you do the process of creating a feature to edit the metadata for this application, right? So, and I'm just winging it here with what they might ask. So if I do that now, you'll see as it's working, one of the things that should pop up here is the model wants to run all tests.
I think it wants to get to a point to say, hey, are we all green before we proceed? So let's do that. So it's going to want to go ahead and run. And that was part of the effort I did yesterday was I actually got the projects, and each of the projects has some basic bit of unit testing around it.
Yeah, so I know we talked about this just a little bit yesterday, and I think I can see how this is working. This actually will be really interesting because I think I don't know what a lot of you think, so I would love to read in comments what you think if you're watching us here and you've gotten this far, which of course we appreciate. If you've hung out with us for this far, that means it's been about 40 minutes, which is huge for YouTube, right? The first test in a project or major feature can be a stumbling block. Like, for example, people for decades ago, people were doing test-driven development demonstrations, and they would always be doing something like, hey, I'm going to create a calculator. So the first test is let's test the add function. And you sit there watching going like, yeah, okay, I can't wait to use this. And then you sit down at your real project and say, what's the first test? Especially because your project might be like an API, an HTTP API. And so you say, well, I don't know what the first test is. And so often what I would like to do is come up with the framework that allows the first test to be, and this is one way to do it. This would be more of an outside in approach. The first test is simply that I am making an HTTP call. It's post to this URL with this request body and these headers.
Mm-hmm.
And the result should be this. Now I think there's a lot of people, myself included, who would say, whoa, how does that test even work?
Right.
Right. Or you could go the other direction of saying, okay, the purpose of building that, of calling that API, what's really going to happen when you call that API is the API is going to reach out to a database, call a stored call I'm sorry, call write a query, get some data back, find the third item in that list and return that, and that should be this. So you'll say, well, I'm not going to worry about going outside in. Let's go inside out. Let's build the business logic that has nothing to do with being a web API. It could be a console app. It could be anything. It could be a link pad script.
Yeah.
Let's write the library that can call that, and we will unit test there. That is what I kind of, I'm not making this up. That's like an inside out approach of start
Right.
small. And the thing about it is that I kind of think you need both.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to stumble on that first test of, is the first test just like, oh, it should all just, I'm going to write the test and it just all fails, but now what do I do? So
Yeah.
I'll be interested in seeing how this works out here. But
Yeah.
because,
Well,
like,
you can
for
see
example, you
maybe-
just said we're adding a new page to the site. Does that mean the first test is some kind of Blazor testing framework that fails because the page doesn't exist? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think even looking at this, it didn't really pull anything from the web component. Everything's focused on the API,
Yep.
right? So do I have the ability, at least on the API side, to do these things? So it's asked a bunch of questions here around the metadata value, what specifically are we editing? What should be editable, and the business rules around that. And I think maybe to kind of refine this a little bit, and this is why I really wish I could speak to it, because typing this is challenging. And maybe what we'll do is this. Let me see. Can I do? Right. So let's do this. And what if I could say this way? All right, so for this feature, what I need to do is ultimately we need a web page that has a grid with a list of all of the metadata in the system available. And then we could select one of those metadata key values and be able to edit the value that's in there. We also should be able to add more metadata as we start to further quantify the system. And so this will impact not only the web front end with its own page, but some of the API components as well. So it's a question of where do we start and how do we start to test all those out? So if I do that and I do this and I come over here and I say, hey, maybe that is what, ooh, that's not what we're looking for. How did that get there? Let's copy. That's better. Okay. And it's so much better than me typing it. Mhm. I did say allow, right? There we go. So our current 13 of 13 passed. So red phase, what's the first failing test? Let's do this so we can see this a little better. So if we go here, it says get all metadata definitions should return a list of all metadata. Okay. And we get those here. And it's going to set up a mock repository. And this is something eventually we'll have to go back and take a look at, because I wasn't crazy about how it set up the is making the determination for which repository to bring in. We could talk about that in a minute. This is aligned with your current testing patterns, right? As you're using similar patterns in existing tests, right? I mean, this seems to be the right pattern of the arrange, and then do the act, and then do the assertion related to for our testing. And then we're going to verify that we get all the definitions. Okay. This doesn't, actual metadata should contain project code department. That doesn't make any sense. Right, because we don't have it probably doesn't know. Well, it should know the metadata definition, right? So it's got that it should be aware of. So based on that, it should know. Um, Interesting. So then, okay,
So it made a mock list, right?
yeah, but that's not. I mean, that's not the right class. That might be the name of the class,
Okay.
and I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah.
But that's certainly not the. Um, it's under core. Right. So there's a metadata definition class where it has that, but it's got D type, it's got regular type, it's got value, it's got display name. It doesn't have any of the not that. It doesn't have
Is
any
it
of those.
is it limiting itself to the API project?
Quite possibly.
Because I wonder if you can tell it. I don't know that. Except that it says metadata definition right there. That so it's saying that it's including that context, right?
And an iMetadata repository, which is what we also have, right? I mean, those are the things. So let's just read on a little bit. So that's something we might need to mess with. Do you have? Oh, there we go. So yes, we do.
Yeah.
So uh, so now you can see here it pulled in a reference and it pulled. Okay.
Yep.
So let me examine the repository interface to understand the contract. Ba, ba, ba.
All right. So it's giving it another try, and here it's building
Right,
mock repository with some.
but the definition's right.
Okay.
It's ID type, display name, description is active, sort order, right? That's our
Yep.
metadata definition. Come on, get out of the way.
So I suppose what this test is doing is it's saying let's isolate just the code that gets definitions, and we don't care where it gets them from. We don't care that it comes from Cosmos DB. It's going to be a mocked repository. Therefore, we can control that it's getting. We can control that it's getting these definitions, and then this is how it should. This is what it should return.
Yeah.
Which seems it seems really basic because people are going to say like, ugh, you know. It's almost like why not just call it? But I hear what you're saying is like you start with the basic foundation of what should pass, and then more complicated business logic is going to come later.
Exactly. And I think it's, I don't know. I mean, you don't want them basic, but you want them small enough and isolated enough so that you can run, like we did at the start of this conversation, 108 unit tests, and they compile and complete in a couple of seconds, right? Because every time you, before you go to do it, I mean, at some point, probably before you do a push, you would want to go ahead and run through all your unit tests, make sure you didn't break anything. And then once it gets up into the real repository, there should be something that runs and does that as well to make sure that you didn't forget to do that, right? All of these unit tests have some impact on GitHub Actions at some point, which we have to build in as well.
Yeah, I mean it seems simple, but if your API is returning, you know, some people, in fact, I'm just going to give him credit. The Primeagen has a thing he likes to say, and if you don't know who he is, obviously he's become very
Yeah.
big on Twitch and YouTube, where he says that like your functions should get the thing, diddle with the thing, put back the thing. Like that's
Okay.
not always how he says it, but the idea is like read from the database, what do whatever you have to do with the data, and then either put it back or display it, I suppose.
Right.
And so in a very simple case where you're just getting definitions, this might seem totally trivial of like, oh, I'm just getting the definition that maps almost one-to-one, or maybe does map directly one-to-one to the API's output. So what am I even testing? Okay, now let's get to the situation where the API output isn't one-to-one. There's business logic to be applied.
Yeah.
If the checking account is closed, it doesn't go in the list, something like that.
Right. Right.
So, now you're
Good point.
verifying that your API properly handles that. And where you put that business logic is up to you. Do you put it in
Mhm.
the query that calls the database, select where not closed, or do you put it in the business logic of the calling API that says just give me all the accounts, I will filter out the ones that aren't closed? And those are development decisions, architectural
Mhm.
decisions. They're not, so the test is just verifying that you got that right. And so like it's asking here, do we have a method already to get all definitions?
Right. And I will be honest, I don't recall. So we're gonna go take a
Yeah,
look.
let's go look.
Um, so it was in our metadata. No, was it our metadata service? Gosh, I'm in our metadata repository. So that's in the data. Uh, metadata repository. No, metadata repository.
Well, you already have an implementation, right?
Yeah,
So let's go to that implementation because I think we can work our way to
work our way back.
yeah. The implementation this is metadata service,
Hmm.
but we have a Cosmos meeting metadata repository implementation. We have that, right?
We do, yeah.
And I just saw it. I saw you scroll past it at some point. That's not it. That wasn't it. Maybe it was in data. I don't remember. Yeah, Cosmos metadata repository. Okay.
Oh,
So
okay.
this is So now the question is, where's that thing? And it is in orbital core data. It was just hiding under the data folder, it looks like.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Right.
In
And that
core.
makes sense because orbital data's got the implementation. Orbital core says, because not that we would do this, but iMetadata repository implementation might be by carrier pigeon. Right? This happens to
Yeah.
be Cosmos DB, and I know that kind of stuff sounds silly, but it's the abstraction layer. I tend to like think really silly about abstraction layer to say like, listen, this interface might be pointing to a text file, and it's like, well, why would I ever do that? You're not going to do that.
Right.
But could it support doing that if you wanted to write all the arduous code to make it work? Sure. So we're not going to do that. We're going to write the implementation we want.
Right.
So anyways, okay, do you already have one, and what is it called is what it's looking for?
Yeah. So it would be the this one here, the get all metadata items async.
Yep.
Oh, shoot. I didn't copy that. Ah. There we go. All right, so let's add this test to your existing. What's the correct metadata type string for metadata definitions in your system? Use its metadata is the type. All right, let's run it. Oh shoot, I didn't add it.
It even asked you to add the test method.
You should be able to do that. Well, it probably can't. This method to the test. And I'm going to think it's going to say no, can't directly do it because he doesn't have the tools available. If we were to give it not just the run tools, if we were to give it the tool to modify, and we can select that later on, it might be able to, it should be able to do that for us. So because of that, I'm just going to take this and copy it. And I'm going to go to the, and I'm going to try and do this quick because we're up against the end of the thing here real quick. Should be under API tests and metadata endpoint tests. A little bit of room. And while there's a lot of tests in here, let's just do, for right now, let's do this here. Paste. All right, a couple of issues. What's your problem? Nope. Okay, using systemnet, that's fine. JSON serializer. Using system text JSON, sure. Okay. Now what's the create test app? Sorry, give me 1 second. I gotta take this.
Okay, so I think where we're hoping to get here is that in just a few seconds we have a failing test that was generated by our TDD coach, and then we could work to pass it, I suppose. Some interesting things I noted about the test is that I don't think the TDD coach totally understands the application. So I think some of the choices it made for a metadata definition might conflict a little bit with what Rich is looking for. However, I also think that the metadata definitions are a little generic. So maybe it's not, maybe that's okay, because it would support that type if you wanted to, and you're not testing the logic of the metadata at this point. You're testing the API, and does it contact the repository, and does it do what it's supposed to do with that information. Just making sure that everything's coming up on the stream here. So this is interesting. I haven't done anything like this before. Like I said, specifically, when we planned to do this episode, the idea is that I don't know what we're doing here, so I can at least try to ask questions, hopefully like an audience member would, and we'll see if we're gonna be able to try and run this test. I think we're just gonna be able to see the test fail today, because our normal stop time is 8:30 U.S. Eastern time. So we'll see. Not sure. I may have to. Hopefully this isn't a serious emergency. But I don't have control of the screen, so that makes it a little difficult.
Hey, sorry about that.
Okay. So we think we might have a failing test. I don't know what create test app is.
Well,
I mean, technically, yes, because it's not compiling, because it doesn't have this create test app. I'm not sure what that is and why that's there.
Yeah.
Because that's here, but make sure your test file includes the following using statements. And if we got to put a pause in here, we can always come back on Friday and finish this up, because I think
Yeah,
you're
I think
kind of
those are all there.
Yeah.
I feel like it's trying to come up with maybe an HTTP client, but I'm not sure relative to the rest of the tests. I just don't know because I haven't looked at the rest of the tests to see how they operate.
And singleton. Oh, it's trying to use the services, and the services come from. Yeah, that's the only place where the services is. So how do we do this other?
So these other tests they're not API tests.
No.
These are just call the repository and get back what you expect.
Yep.
So maybe this really needed to go in metadata HTTP client test, but I'm not sure.
And then we would swap the client around for, yeah. Okay. All right. I think that's where we'll go. It's not something I'm gonna do, and then yeah, I think we probably.
So I wonder. It'll be interesting to see to figure out how do we work with the coach, or is the right thing to work with the coach so that it understands like how the tests are laid out, or maybe it's because the coach is coming in the middle of this that's making it a struggle because we already had a bunch of tests in place. So
good point. So I test, but there is no service available for the create. What they call it? Create something. Create test app. So add this to the region helper methods.
does that mean that AI likes regions?
It looks like it, doesn't it?
Wow. What a revelation.
This will probably fail, but for different reasons. But okay. Let's save that. But I still don't think that's. Did they create? Wait.
That's a replacement method for the other test.
Yeah. Okay. So it took this, which I probably should just do the whole thing just to be safe. Copy. It's up here. Ba, ba, ba. Seems to like all that. Okay. So now if we go back to so let's run it. That's what we did. We updated the test. We used the correct version above. We added the helper method. Um, I
I didn't see what happened on the test there.
it basically failed. It failed to run. Right.
Okay.
It's like a broken build.
Oh, okay.
So technically, it's red.
Sure. But not what
We're
you
looking
wanted.
for.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Close.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna have to spend some time wrapping my head around this. Definitely there's a lot to do, and I'm curious how I don't know. I guess we'll see, because I don't know how I haven't looked at the test bed in a while, so I'm not sure
Yeah.
if it's confusing what you're trying to do. I don't know. But in any case, all right. So I guess that's where we're at for today. A few minutes behind here. And then we'll see if we can get another show going later this week, right?
Hoping for Friday. That's
Okay.
the plan.
All
So,
right. Sounds
cool,
good.
cool.
Well, Rich, thanks for walking us through that. I've
Yeah.
added some links to I added a link to the custom repository instructions, the repository custom instructions for GitHub Copilot. I added that link to the show notes and
Okay.
a link to the GitHub repo for this project. So
Yeah.
in
Which
that
has all.
case,
Yeah.
a little behind here, but we'll get out of here. For Rich, I'm Chris, and we'll see you all next time on the Dev Talk Show.